Hey, Sara, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking out the time for this.
Hi, Usman. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to reach out to you and have this conversation for a long while. Been following your content for, I think, a few years now, and the way you speak about content overall is something that really resonates with me. The good thing about your content is that you just touch so many channels and so many threads that it's perhaps relevant for almost all of the different marketers that belong into different fields, right? So demand gen folks, content folks, email marketing, almost all of the aspects of marketing are somehow touched by you. So yeah, I've been really fascinated with the content you put out and was thrilled to have this chat with you.
Thank you for all these compliments. I didn't even pay you to say this, so very, very appreciated. Thank you.
Awesome. So I guess we can just get into it. So the way I want to steer this conversation is I want to talk about building a content strategy for B2B companies, right? I guess it's one of the most misunderstood or perhaps um, misexecuted, right? Because of how people now have this growth hacky way of doing content marketing in the B2B space. And then on the other hand, I would love to spend some time within the episode to talk about how you approach marketing for your own personal brand on LinkedIn, because I see a lot of things that you do intentionally. So I would love to pull some threads on how you approach content for your own LinkedIn profile and those kind of things. So shall we get into it?
Amazing. Let's do it.
Awesome. So let's start with, defining what a content strategy is. I think it's one of those terms that have kind of lost its meaning. So the word content strategy itself just means so many things to so many different folks. Some would call, in the SEO world, a list of keywords a content strategy, right? We write blog posts and that's our content strategy. Some folks would be posting very randomly a couple of times on LinkedIn and they would call that a content strategy. So when you think of what you believe to be a solid content strategy, what are some of the key components that comes to your mind?
So for me, content strategy is really the modern communication, marketing and communication, very simply. So how do you get your message out in today's world? Maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago or more, it was really billboard and ads and radio, and now we have a lot more channels, so that's basically what has changed. And I think the difficulty now is really picking the right channels, because unless you are one of the biggest 500 Fortune 500 companies, you cannot afford to, get all the channels. Then there is also paid, there is organic. I don't. Content strategy is everything. It's medium and channel agnostic. And also, how do you really connect it with what you are about on the one end as a company, what you're about, what you offer, and on the other hand, how do you connect it to what the people and your audience wants to hear on the other hand? So that's how I would define it.
Right. So when you say what you are as a company, do you mean what your problem, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, or would you say what product you have to offer in order to solve that problem? So is it more about what you help your customers with, or is it more about what you've built to offer to the world?
I mean, I think it's a bit of everything, right? Because people want to know how you can help them first, but then once they know how you can help them, they obviously also want to know a bit more about you, right? So how do you communicate it in a way that it's kind of impactful, clear, engaging?
Hmm. Right. So you talked about having different channels, right? And the approach that most of the companies have to content marketing is kind of divided into different marketing channels that we have available to us, right? So SEO is one, social would be one, paid search, many other things. So these days, I see a lot of B2B companies running their content programs in silo, right? So a few blog posts they would publish in a month, and on the other hand, their LinkedIn content would follow a totally different kind of topical theme. So it feels like there's a lot of randomness in the way that they plan their content, right? Specifically for different channels. So you see that, email newsletter, they're talking about something else. On LinkedIn, they're talking about something else. Do you feel like there needs to be a solid cohesiveness, consistency of what a company is talking about across all channels? Or should it be just, one channel figures it out for themselves and then the rest of the department, just do the same for themselves?
Well, I mean, I think the benefits of having something consistent are many in the sense, it's less work, it's more clarity, it's kind of consistent branding. So I think it should be the case, but then maybe there can be a few exceptions. For example, let's say if you want to use TikTok or Instagram for employer branding and only post employer branding things, then it's another story. But obviously, maybe you can try to recycle some posts that are more on the marketing side. I think the lack of or the chaos that you mentioned happens because companies don't plan, and they just live day by day. Some companies also don't really know that I mean, yes, of course they know that you can repurpose in a way, but they don't know how to do it really systematically, like a value chain, like an assembly chain, like to start really to plan one piece of pillar content and then to distribute it in a different way, to also align paid and organic content, and I mean, for me, content strategy is also more traditional offline channels. It's also an
Hmm.
event, in-person event. It's also old school
Right.
classical PR. So it's really about where do we start from. We have this kind of um, recipe, this substance that is this thing, this report, this message, this product, and how do we distribute it in different ways, making sure that it reaches the people, and it reaches the people as also an element of optimizing for the channel, because we all know, for example, on LinkedIn now, if you post only text posts, it's a lot harder to get seen versus carousels or videos, right?
Right, right, right. Makes sense. So if you were to, build a content strategy for a B2B company, and this is just me trying to pull, a thread of what you just said, in terms of channels, right? So imagine there's a B2B company and you're trying to build a content strategy for them that they can use across all channels, right? Or possibly a number of channels that they operate into. So they have SEO, they have LinkedIn, they have maybe other channels available to them. So would you say you build a content strategy as in, hey, this is the direction that we want to follow, and then each of the teams would, follow that direction within their own research and then start executing? Or would it be that, all of those teams already have a strategy, they just do their own thing, and then they just add elements of what you've already developed in terms of the strategy? So would they start from your strategy, or would they say, we already have this thing going, let's add what Sara has developed with her own research?
I mean, I don't know, it really depends. I cannot answer this like that. I mean, usually if there is a strategy that is good and you just can optimize it a bit, maybe improve the content, the quality content, improve the processes. For example, I don't know, in SEO they're not really good at understanding what the search intent or what topics are trending. Then it's really more like the fundament, the message, the reasoning is
Hmm.
good, but just the expression is flawed, the execution is flawed. Why?
Right.
If the problem goes more in the roots, meaning that, for example, if you would look at the content, you would not understand what the company sells, then it's really like a strategic problem where you really need to do, I don't know, a value prop canvas and really be like, okay, what problems do you solve? What are the content pillars that we're going to build? And you start more from there.
Hmm. Right. So there was a graphic that I actually saw. I think perhaps you've shared it on LinkedIn in the past. Maybe I'm not sure if it's up to date at this point in the way that you work. However, that approach resonated with me. So you had these different phases of building a strategy, right? And I think one of the first few components that you had was audience research. Now, audience research, I think, is one of the biggest components. Of course, I talk a lot about it in the context of SEO content strategy. But how how do you approach building that understanding of audience? Let's say if you're working at a company, right? Um, and you're responsible for building the strategy for them that would help them drive more business. What approach would you have to understand the customer personas in more detail? Build that connection with the audience that you're trying to reach. What kind of questions would you be trying to find the answer of in order to build that holistic understanding of the customer?
Okay, so first of all, one big learning for me has been that you should have like a plan, which is this graph that you talk about, to know, what pieces are important, what steps. But it's also true that a company is very complex, so there is no magic formula, and very often the problems are kind of collateral to what you want to do as a marketer. So I think you just try to follow a path, a line, and try to put the pieces that you can find along the way. And it's better to start like the 80-20 rule, so don't over obsess, like framework, whatever, build the plane while flying. And audience research, I think for me was very helpful, especially because I have always worked in industries that were extremely complex, and that were so far away from me as a marketer, mainly tech, kind of tech enterprise software development, not like B2B SaaS marketing tools, right? So kind of trying even to have a conversation with clients to just understand the vibe and what kind of how they talked, what glossary they used, why they decided to work with us, what kind of collaboration we were doing. It was just extremely useful to just kind of adapt the language and also like the topics. But it's not always possible, to, especially in such a company, where, I mean, probably if you are HubSpot or whatever, it's not that difficult to interview 10 or 20 marketers and ask them how they use HubSpot. While if you are really like a software development company and you work with chief security officers or whatever, if you get like 3 of them, it's already a lot. And so I think there it's a lot more important that some of the insights come also from the people that have to do, the account managers, the salespeople, the technical experts that maybe have the same role as the ideal clients within the company. And so you talk with them and try to collect, trends and topics, try to understand the product a bit better. And then once you're there, I think it's also very important that you as a marketer try to get a bit into the weeds of this topic, so that you can then go and suggest topics as well, combine it with a bit of keyword research, that builds on the insights that maybe are not, I mean, a lot of, in those times, keyword research will give you zero volume, So I think because the topics are very, very niche in those sort
Yeah.
of industries. So I think you start from what the experts tell you, and then you complement it maybe with keyword research, with things that are a bit more top of the funnel level. I don't spit on top of the funnel, but I think it's still very good, especially in ABM and stuff like that, like in niche industries that are not product marketing, where people are buy. Yeah. So hope I answered. It
Yeah.
was a long
Yeah,
stretch.
no, you did. I think what you mentioned about the zero search volume definitely resonates a lot with me. I am a really big fan of starting with customer insights and then trying to lay on top of it the insights that you can get from keyword research tools. At the end of the day, these are tools, even if they you know help you move faster, have more data, make data driven decisions, but still you cannot determine with a particular search volume as a number, who exactly is the person that is making that search, right? Would it be an intern at a company, or is it like a director of marketing that you're trying to reach? So yeah. So what you mentioned is two different things, right? One was to connect with your internal subject matter experts in order to build that understanding of the product and who we're trying to sell to, the company and all of that stuff. And then on the other hand, the customers directly, right? So would you say, um, in order to connect with them normally, do you conduct interviews? How do you run that whole process? What does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, in a previous company, I really, when I joined, I ran interviews and really asked like very ignorant questions in the sense, who are you? What do you do? Explain me what your job is about. Explain me how you use the product. Explain me why. Like all those things. Really, like sometimes a bit embarrassing myself, but it's better to do it at the start when you are really new, so they think it's normal. And I think other times I really interviewed people for case studies, and that was also very nice because you really feel that they're a lot more open. They tell you the story from their eyes, and yeah.
Hmm. And then, so interview, let's say, a customer for a case study or something else, right? And you build that understanding, and then you try to chop that up into different pieces of content afterwards. So you think of the topics that you want to go based on what the customers have told you, or based on the case studies in the way that the product has benefited them. So would the topics come afterwards and connect back to those stories that you received from the customers?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first, before I obviously would tap the internal needs of the according to the business strategy. So, what offer,
Hmm.
what product are you gonna push, and then this will also dictate, in an ideal scenario, what customers you will interview, what case studies you're gonna produce, and then, I mean, the good thing is that once you're interviewing for case studies, um, I mean, it's you can frame it better because you can add also questions that are not really related to the case study itself. You can also, for example, add questions about the perception of the brand or the competitors or,
Hmm.
all of these things. So I think it's really about collecting these insights and kind of trying to combine them with the stuff that you need to do according to the business strategy. Because I think that's ultimately what makes the content relevant. If you are creating even the best content, but your business strategy is going elsewhere or the content is going elsewhere, I mean, it's not aligned, then why are you doing it? Let's say if
Hmm.
HubSpot wants to focus on, I don't know, doubling sales hub sales, let's say this couple of quarters, then why are they creating only blogs about marketing topics? Makes zero sense, and that's
Right,
what happens
right,
all
right,
the
right.
time.
Right. And then that was, in fact, my next question, which was, um, if you think of building that alignment between the objectives that the company is trying to reach from a business standpoint, and then then you see what they're doing on the content execution end, right? So you say, well, so they're working on these blog posts, they're publishing these videos on YouTube, this is what they're putting out on LinkedIn, but they have these other objectives. How do you find that mismatch? So would it be, hey, you're not talking about the product that you want to promote, or would it be something else, something more nuanced than that? How do you find that misalignment that a company is not attaching their content strategy with what they have in their mind from a business perspective?
Yeah, I mean, this is I think the biggest and simplest test. When you are like going on somebody's blog and maybe you try not. I mean, in some cases you don't know what the company does. In others, you know and try to pretend you don't know, and are like, if I didn't know, would I understand what they actually do? And the answer is no. Then we already have a problem. But then I think sometimes, I mean, the reality is that the majority of B2B companies have zero traffic, zero engagement, just like a graveyard. So we know it. What we see on LinkedIn is rather the exception. But let's say in a case where there is a lot of engagement and top of the funnel metrics, but then they are kind of, you go in search console or whatever and you see the keywords are completely irrelevant, then also you have a problem. It's a bit like those people on LinkedIn who post all those selfies and whatever, and then you're like, okay, great, you're having, I don't know, 3,000 likes, but you sell, I don't know, something that you don't even mention in the post. So it's your ego, it's not relevant.
Right. And by the way, just out of my own curiosity, and I know we're jumping into this, LinkedIn game, which I want to get to in the second half of this episode. But out of curiosity, how do you determine what that balance should be for someone's LinkedIn content in particular? So, because I'm asking this because I think the other day I posted some, just a picture of mine with, something that I believe about the way I live my life, about around negative emotions, for example, right? And I was curious because I've never posted something like that, right? I always stay on the topic, which is SEO, content
Oh.
marketing, those kind of things. uh, do you feel like there should typically be those kind of that kind of content ideally should never be a part of the plan, or would there be a good balance to achieve? How do you determine that?
Oh, I didn't see that. That's why I didn't like it. No, I mean, I think it's very important. I mean, I've never been a selfie person. I've never been, I used to take pictures semi-professionally, so I love, photos and aesthetics. But I don't like things out of context, so I
Mm.
like stories. I think, for example, today I posted this thing about kind of me leaving my job, and I think I really, did a collection of images, and then also all the things I've been working on in those 2.5 years. I think that's great. And because obviously people are interested in people, and people are super interested in seeing, kind of casual shots of people working at companies. It just, that's why we stop the scroll, right?
Yeah,
But
for
I
sure.
think it like, and this is a win-win because you deliver information and you deliver entertainment in a way. But I think
Hmm.
it needs to be balanced to make great content, and if you can make it often, because maybe, I don't know, maybe you are the CEO of a company, and so your main goal on LinkedIn is really being, spreading the culture, being like just the face of the company, then yeah, it's actually not a wrong idea to post pictures every day of you and the stuff that you do or your employees,
Hmm.
but in other cases, I don't think so.
Right. Yeah, it can be the case that you're building that association with your own personality, and people perhaps, know who you are, but they do not attach or associate the things that you work on or the service that you deliver, right? So SEO in my case, right? Content in your case, with your personality. So they know who you are as a person, but they don't know what you sell, what you do, what you're an expert in. Um, that makes a lot of sense. So coming back to the content strategy phase, right? Everything that you do in order to build that strategy for any company, let's say, there's one component of customer journey mapping, right? I really want to understand how you approach this. Do you have a framework for understanding and mapping that whole journey? So at the start, for example, you would build this understanding of the customer. You would do these interviews, talk to subject matter experts around the customer that you're trying to reach and how your product solves that problem. But then when it comes to actually mapping and understanding their journey from awareness to becoming a customer, how would that work? I ask this because we all know the B2B buying journey is very complex, right? And it involves long sales cycle, a lot of touch points. I in fact remember this is one of the posts that you did on LinkedIn where you had these three graphics. One was like, hey, this is how normally people see customer
Oh,
journey. So problem aware, solution aware, and product aware. But then you
yeah.
you posted a picture from Gartner, which was like a LinkedIn post and then an email newsletter, and then for 3 months they don't think about anything. So very complex. So I'm just thinking, when you have to create content, when that's like the end goal for you, how would you build that whole customer journey map, what would that look like? What would be the logic of it?
So I think in practice, this looks fantastic. The reality is very different because it's impossible to do, right? We all know it. But I think it's just a very good mental exercise to have like a goal and to make sure that you're not overdoing on top or bottom of the funnel content, basically. That's my only goal. And then to optimize as I go. Because the reality is, in an ideal scenario, we would be like, amazing, let's do top of the funnel link YouTube videos, then let's do this touch, this touch, this touch. Okay, everything is, we do every channel for every stage, whatever. The reality is that you often start with just a few channels, right? So I think it's just important to understand that you need to balance it out and be like, okay, we have blog top of the funnel, we have blog bottom of the funnel, we have those sales touches, we have I don't know, videos. We're gonna make we're gonna make product videos, and we're gonna do, I don't know, awareness videos. I think the main goal for me there is really understanding the balance along, like, the balance of the content funnel, whatever, to make sure that we have our channels on the radar, but not only the marketing channels, because I think that's the biggest mistake. People think, okay, that's only a marketing thing. No, no, no. It's really like every channel that exists, so the
Hmm.
sales process, the sales cadences, also to understand, for example, sales enablement content that you need to produce, so, and when it's gonna be relevant, like on what channel is it gonna be relevant, because that's always very random. It's always like, oh, let's post this on LinkedIn type of thing. And so even if, let's say, we don't cover any scenario, because new touch points emerge all the time at some point, maybe you're like, oh, this person found us here and they were doing this, and then you add new touch points. And another thing that I was like, oh, just ask people where they find you. Just
Hmm.
I don't know, it never works. Because they don't remember. They obviously say, oh yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. I read blogs. No, I don't. Do you listen to podcasts? No, I don't have time, and then they do. Maybe they just don't listen to your podcast. So I think it's good to have like a basic understanding, to put the things there to make sure you're not overdoing on one part of the journey. Maybe also seeing a bit what your competition is doing, and I'm not saying copying, but getting inspiration to cover maybe some channels that were, or touch points that were not really on your radar.
Right. That makes sense. I remember, to your point about buyers not remembering the channels that you're active on, or where exactly they interact with you. The last episode I did of the podcast was with Ryan Gibson, who is an expert in customer research, and he mentioned that if you really think about this, almost all of the B2B um, buyers, for most of the industries, right, with a few exceptions, almost always have a same number of touch points or channels that they consume content in, right? So LinkedIn would be one. We of course all know search engines could be one. Communities would be one, right? So the channels themselves maybe overlap a lot, but then there are a lot of other information points that you can gather by understanding the customer journey overall, as in qualitative insights, right? So when they talk to the sales team, what do they ask? So we can produce that content and maybe help improve the sales velocity. Um, yeah, really fascinating. Also, you mentioned about events, right? You think of events as a content strategy as well.
Mhm.
Do you mean in terms of using events to create content? Because that's also an approach a lot of folks are now using, right? So they would record everything that happened on the event that they joined, and then they would have content for LinkedIn. Or do you mean having something to put out on the event? So, for example, you're speaking on a topic or maybe connecting with other people. So, which one of these two would you be referring when you say event as a content strategy?
I mean, theoretically both, you know. I mean, it's a bit like social media. You post content and you see what comments are left on there. It's really the same thing, just live, which I think is amazing because you know that I'm a fan of in-person things. So, I mean, I have done in the past this thing of recording an event and then trying to make a blog out of it, whatever.
Um,
I mean, you know that it doesn't really work, especially if you want to create SEO content. It's very, very hard. And I think so. I think actually doing the opposite is a lot easier, not more sustainable. Really, ideally, I mean, from if you can start from the longest form ever, the better. You know, if you can start from podcasts or if you can start from industry reports, like you can easily build your entire content strategy for a quarter
mm,
or a semester. You know, and then you can also, because I mean, the average company, I mean, unless you're like a big company, you have maybe, I don't know, 2 very important events per quarter or semester, one big event per semester, and you have like some smaller webinars, whatever. And I think if you can plan in advance already that you're gonna distribute this content that is your pillar content via the event, it's just another way to, you know, bring really the message in front of the audience, and you know they're gonna listen unless you're very bad at presenting because they're gonna be there, right?
right. That makes sense. Um, I remember, in the last company that I worked at, Flying Cat, Maiva, who was our CEO, she would do a lot of podcasts, normally speaking, with also other folks in the industry, right? So other SEOs and those kind of people, but then primarily the targeted customer of Flying Cat. So those would be B2B SaaS companies that Maiva would invite as guests. And I would always be very fascinated by that because maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, we were making that as the first touch point for a lot of people who we could possibly work with in the future, and that happened, right? So a lot of people who came on the podcast and became a customer afterwards. However, from a content perspective, I was also thinking, we're killing so many birds with one stone. So you're talking about ideas and you're interviewing customers, and then you're chopping the clips from the same podcast for LinkedIn distribution. Maybe a conversation with a guest can inspire a blog post topic, and perhaps you see search volume. So all of those different kind of cross pollination of content can happen, exactly as you mentioned, by just having one big piece of content at the top, right?
Totally, it's really like a win-win, but you know it because you're doing the same with this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. uh, okay, cool. So once you've gathered the customer insights, once you've aligned it with the business objectives, thought of the customer journey, what are some of the tactics that you would come up with actual topics to create content on? So what does that whole process looks like to you when you're crafting topics? Do you think of the product? Do you think of the customers? How do you plan middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, all of that stuff? What is the actual sequence or the thought process that you have when you're coming up with the topics?
Well, I mean, topics, it depends obviously where I'm starting, you know. So let's say I'm starting from the blog as the pillar content. Then I have kind of, I start from the offering mainly, you know. So the offering gives me idea of really the kind of the frame that I need to move in, you know. I mean, it's a must. Then if I have maybe some topics that are a bit off topics, fine, but this needs to be covered. Then obviously I need to be realistic because what is the capacity of my team? What is the content velocity of the blog? You know, I've really tried to improve it a lot in the last job that I had, and I think we doubled it. But still, I mean, when you're writing a blog on cloud identity and you need, I don't know, 5 experts that give input, it's very unlikely, A, that ChatGPT can write it, B, that you can push out once every week, right? So I would rather say, even the reality is, what is a realistic publishing schedule? So if it's like 2 articles per month, because that's kind of the sweet spot, also that the quality doesn't decline. Then according to that, I'm gonna be like, okay, it depends on the industry. If it's a product business, obviously I would rather tend towards the bottom of the funnel and be like, the majority of the content needs to be bottom of the funnel. I don't know, 60%, 70%, whatever that is, right? In a business like, the one where I've been working up to now, there is no product. So there is no bottom of the funnel in a way. I mean, yes, there is bottom of the funnel in the sense that obviously then you can put a CTA, like talk to us, but the sales cycles are so long and nobody ever, even if actually that happens, because we had a few kind of really very hands-on consulting packages, so actually people bought it from the blog, even if I was really not expecting it at all. And the blog was actually it was basically a pillar page, so it was really like an all you can learn about this particular topic, right? That's also why I say don't spit on top of the funnel content. But what I'm saying in this case, if it's not a product business, I would rather try to focus on either pillar content that covers all, like ultimate guides or whatever, or maybe informational content mostly, because everything else is basically a service page. So yeah.
Do you
and then for me, I mean, I use for me, SEO is really more than it's also a channel, but it's just a very nice way to structure my content strategy, So I think keyword research is for me the best way to really see what's out there, what other people are talking at. So maybe when I see something that's relevant, I pick it up, I obviously do look what's in the SERPs, what's ranking, what competitors are doing, and then I basically put all those topics together in a mirror board, with search volume, even if, especially again in this particular business, for me search volume is not important at all, or not important. So I put it there, and I tell my experts if I understood, because at that point, me understanding those topics so that I can actually come and suggest topics is super important, And so they tell you, this is okay, no, actually we don't offer this, this is too far from what we do, And then you can evaluate if you can still connect it, for example, or not. For example, it's a software development company. We created an article that ranked pretty well about AI in software development. Do we sell AI for software development? No. But still, it was a trending topic that brought in a lot of traffic. And to be honest, for anybody in SEO, the keyword volume was super low. But for us, it was not. So a balance of those things, I would say, but obviously trending topics with moderation.
Right. Got it. I absolutely loved that point that you mentioned about validating your topics that you've researched with your team, and seeing how closely it connects back to the product or the business objectives. And they, of course, if they're really the subject matter experts, they know better than us, because especially when we've newly joined a company as marketers, we don't know that well, right? Our vision is kind of blinded, and we're only looking at one thing, which is how do I get more traffic and those kind of things. So that closeness to the product or to the audience is better understood by other people in the company.
A lot of actually, and also we at the beginning, the process was like, hey guys, do you have an idea about what you could write? And honestly, obviously, especially if you ask tech people, they will come with a master thesis on insert any tech topic, and obviously not even knowing what's out there in the World Wide Web, and also like, how often do you think they can do it? It takes so much time to write an article and whatever. So flipping the thing where marketing does really drive it, and it's like, that's what I think we should do. Do you sign it off or not? It's actually what doubled our content velocity and also improved our our quality, because from the experts you need the validation and you need the key insights that only they can have. But marketing should be able at some point to understand the offering quite well, right? Even if maybe in an easier business where the product was less technical, marketers at some point don't even need anymore the sign off that this is relevant. But in an industry like this, or banking, pharma, whatever that is, of course you need that.
Right. Got it. So this is what alignment between product and marketing, product and sales, sorry, marketing and sales, marketing and product, all of these different departments looks like. Where you have ideas, you try to validate it, and then you go on the execution cycle. Um,
Yeah.
cool. So steering our conversation to LinkedIn, right? So still talking about content strategy, but still just staying in the lane of LinkedIn in particular as a channel, right? And I want to use your example here and try to dissect this playbook that you've used. I'm not sure if there is a playbook, but everything that worked for you, I would love to understand how you did it and the approach that you have for.
Unpacking the dirty laundry. I've been in a pod for 3 years. That's what happened.
Yeah, the secret is finally out, guys. Okay, so yeah, so to understand, you have a pretty big following on LinkedIn. You've built this following in relatively shorter period of time, I think, in a few years. Um, and I'm definitely envious of your number of followers. So if I were to, get on the same scale, let's say, or someone else, right, just starting out LinkedIn, uh, how would you advise them if they want to build an audience, if they want to build a following, and have potentially business opportunities coming at them? They just want to get into the world and open up their horizons using LinkedIn as a channel. What they should do?
But first of all, I don't think I built them in a very short time. I think there are people who grew a lot faster than me, but I'm very proud because I think I built them sustainably, which is a lot more important. And I feel, to answer your question, I think it's become a lot harder now to grow on social media, on LinkedIn, wherever, because yeah, it's so overcrowded. As you saw, probably the reach has never been lower, also for me, obviously. Um, but I think obviously it's about creating great content, and I don't know how to tell you how to create great content. I think I'm very gifted when it comes to that. I think I'm a decent storyteller. I think I really enjoy it, and the fact that I really enjoy it, and that it's been part of my job. I also had a past of a pretty big blog when I was a teenager, so I had kind of a competitive advantage versus somebody who never really wrote, never really created, never really designed, these kind of things. And I think for me, I also learned that the growth comes in seasons, in the sense, the strategy that I had at the beginning is not the same strategy that I have now. The things that I can pull off now are not the same that I could pull off when I was nobody. I mean, I'm not like famous, but you know what I mean. Like when I had like 1,000 followers, like I could not just post something more personal, random, and expect a billion people liking it, right? And I think I really noticed how at some point people got tied and about me, about my personality, about my personal brand, whatever you want to call it. And so I shifted also maybe a bit more heavily on personal posts,
Hmm.
So, and I think now differentiating in whatever way is also super important, because there are so many people posting about SEO, so many people posting about content marketing, so finding really a unique angle and unique also visual expression type of thing, branding, is important, I think.
Right. And when it comes to the tactical game, right? When you're making that content and then putting it out, do you recommend sticking with a particular cadence, or being very quantity focused, those kind of things? What would you say? Someone needs to post a couple of times a week, or those kind of things, or
Yeah, so I think, to be honest, I've always been against quantity now even more than ever. I mean, the other day I was like somebody who told me, yeah, like I now I have this template, blah blah, magic prompt, whatever, and I can create, in 5 minutes like 70 posts, whatever. So I really think quantity has never been more overblown, and I hate that because that's the reason why my reach gets gets cut in half. But I think it's important to really have a structure that makes it sustainable, so that you can really repeatedly create the content. So for me, I create my content on the weekend. I collect my ideas during the week, so the ideation and the creation are separated, and that works wonders for me, because that task switching is really like a problem. um and I think also the more you do like offline, the easier content is, because really kind of documenting what you're already doing, kind of elaborating, trying also to document, putting down on paper what you work on, I think is super nice, and is super also, yeah, it's a lot easier when you're passionate, when you're into a topic. It just comes a lot easier than, what should I write about now, right?
Hmm.
So this is, I think, is a very necessary thing. And then for me, the sweet spot is really 3 times a week, because then I have one day of break in between. And I feel it's really where quantity and quality are in perfect balance. More, I really also don't enjoy it anymore. There was, I think, I don't know when, a time where I was trying to post every day or 4 times a week, and I just felt, oh no. So, and I think people don't realize how important that is. I feel for me the biggest driver has really been the passion. I always repeat it in my posts. It's really, I enjoy it. I could not post, because I really,
Oh,
it's
right.
it's kind of a self-expression thing.
Right. Yeah, I guess instilling that drive in someone is definitely harder, or in fact impossible if someone is not driven by it somehow. Um, I have a theory. I want you to react to it, right, around LinkedIn content. So when I see some people getting, 300, 400 likes for very basic stuff, so the information just sounds very basic. And they, somehow are generating, you know thousands of impressions, and hundreds of likes and reposts, all of that stuff. My hypothesis is that even if they have this much reach, it's most probably because they're attracting the people who are new to the field, because they can value from this high level, surface level, broad level thing. So for example, an example of this would be within SEO. They have, there are tons of people sharing every single day on page SEO checklist, right? How to write a title tag, those kind of things. um, and the way I see that, and I really want your thoughts on that, right, because I could be wrong, um, is that I should not be bothered by the level of reach my posts are getting if my content is very basic, because that would of course speak to the masses. So what I try to do, at least in my approach, in my limited experience, is try to create something which I think the people who I want to sell to, or be, connected with, who are, who understand SEO as a channel on a deeper level, would talk about more advanced stuff. So I should be fine with limited reach, or maybe, not massive kind of like numbers, or shares or comments, those kind of things. How do you think about that? Do you feel like that's a fine mindset towards it? Does it make logical sense?
I think it's the same with publishing top of the funnel content in SEO, right? That has a lot of search volume. It's exactly the same thing. It's not the one that will then close the deal in a way, but
Hmm.
could be the one that gives you visibility to then bring people to the product pages. So I think, to be honest, I like, rather than this basic stuff, that serves nobody, because you can really go into ChatGPT and you can go on Google and it's gonna appear right in the people also ask whatever. Um,
Yeah.
And I think it's important on social to have also a balance of top of the funnel engagement
Hmm.
content, but I
Okay.
would rather do it with, either personal things, remember what we discussed before, so always tied to, some story, some background story, or maybe just some thoughts. For example, the other day, a guy that I know from LinkedIn, Andrea Bosoni, he posted like really a two-liner. I really like his posts because his posts are so digestible and easy. Like I can comment every time immediately. Like I really like this
Yeah.
type of content on social media. So I
Yeah.
actually think that short content is made for social media. Um, but like he really posted, everybody wants to create AI content, nobody wants to consume AI content, and this post blew up
Yeah.
completely. Why?
For
Because
sure.
it's
Yeah.
so true, and but still, it's not fluff like somebody posting just like a picture of their face. So I think this
Right.
type of content, and then you're like, my God, I spent 5 hours writing like a very in-depth and this guy got viral with a two-liner. Yeah, but that's genius in another way, in my opinion.
Right.
So and this way you can attract people with something like this, and you can make them stay with more in-depth stuff.
Right, right, right. I also loved that post, by the way. The moment I saw it, I think it was only posted 1 hour ago, and it was already blowing up. And it like the content made sense, right? Like it was a really simple concept. And yeah, totally with you on that. So but the takeaway that I've taken from your answer is, you can create basic content, but there's a difference between basic and fluff content. Your basic content do not need to be fluff, right? Right, right, right. Cool, cool. Awesome. So, one interesting point about your approach to LinkedIn, and this is something that I also wanted to speak to you, Sarah, even in personally, apart from the podcast, which is your approach to leaving comments on other people's posts. It's really fascinating because I think even if I were to just count the number of times you comment on other people's posts throughout the day, it's like the number doesn't make a lot of sense. And almost all of the time, those comments are very thoughtful. They are very meaningful, right? They're never fluff. They're never super, high level. How do you do this? How do you approach this? And why do you do this exactly?
Well, to be honest, I think it's quite time intensive, and I have LinkedIn addiction maybe. But obviously, I think at the beginning it's super super important to engage, because it gets you seen and people reciprocate. Very basic. Um, then, and this was my thinking at the beginning of my LinkedIn journey. It's still my thinking. I think I'm not gonna do it forever. My goal is to scale down the engagement a bit, but the reality is, I'm interested in things. I only comment on things that interest me. I rarely, like, if a post is super super long, I'm not gonna read it all. I'm just gonna extract a few sentences that resonate and comment on that. Thank God it always worked, and I never said something wrong, or people didn't tell me. um but I don't like, if I don't like the content, even if it's a person I like or whatever, I'm not gonna comment on it. So that makes it easier, because I have something to say about it. And lately I really mostly comment very ironically, because I like making jokes, and I think there is not enough of this on LinkedIn, and so whatever, like I'm somebody like who is very spontaneous and can pick up on things very easily. If you put me in a room with people, I can talk to everybody about something, how they talk, how they're dressed, where they're from, anything. And it's exactly the same on LinkedIn. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, as I said, I've always been very fascinated with your approach to it because I just I can see the scale of engagement that you have with other people's content, which is amazing. But at the same time, it never compromises quality. It's like I haven't seen you ever leave a comment that says, "Hey, I agree," or "Nice post." Those kind of things I've never seen coming from you. It's always very in depth, very meaningful. So yeah, that makes sense. So
Maybe
you talked
something
about
that I add is that I
yeah.
know by now a lot of people from LinkedIn in the sense, know in the sense that either I've met them in person or that we have
Hmm.
been on calls. And obviously when you know them personally, you can also talk about things that are kind of inside jokes between you and the other person, and that helps too.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. I think you talked about this reciprocal effect, right? Where if you engage with someone and they feel this human burden of also doing the same for you for some reason. I think it happened to me. It's at the start when we were engaging. I could see you coming on my post very regularly, and that just made me um, be more active towards your content and pay a little more attention. And that's yeah, that's exactly how I think we got connected on a deeper level. And then finally we're here. Okay, so a loaded question about LinkedIn content. What do you think of engagement pods? Do you think it's a tool for good, or do you feel it's like a one of the set of shady growth hacky techniques being used that do no good for the marketing world?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a cheater. That's all I have to say. Like I mean, I would not feel good. I think obviously maybe it gives you visibility. There must be some advantage on it, right? But especially if you're doing it to sell LinkedIn courses and show that you
Hmm.
can have your engagement, you're lying to people. And also, how can you promise other people to have the same results? Are you gonna say, hey, by the way, the first thing you need to do is actually join a pod? I mean, people who want to grow on LinkedIn, unless they're just like, those 20 years old, they're like, I want the likes, are business owners. And business owners want revenue, don't want likes. So what are you going to do? Right? So, no, I don't like cheaters. There has been lately a very, I think, kind of a big scandal where they exposed a lot of people that were in those spots, and it was kind of a lot of those people with very big following where every time I see posts, I'm like, how is this possible that this is getting so much engagement? So it finally explained why that is.
Okay, okay. You would have to tell me about the story after the episode. Already very curious. Um, okay, so what do you think of how do you exactly measure success with LinkedIn? Because it's one of those dark social channels where you don't know exactly what to track. It's a combination of what marketers have always believed to be vanity metrics, right? So do you look at likes? Do you look at reach? Or do you only look at, for example, the number of opportunities coming at you, those kind of things? How would you define success with LinkedIn?
So to be honest, I have never, and I'm not even lying, I have never taken track of anything related to my LinkedIn. Like, I don't know how many impressions I had over the last year. I don't know. I mean, I keep an eye on the reach of each post, so I can tell you, if engagement is going out or not, if up or down, or if carousels have more reach than other. But again, I told you I do this for me, so I don't care. Like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't be a bit bummed if then I would have like 2 likes on all of my posts. God forbid, no. But still, it's not important to me. And I feel for me, obviously the priorities have shifted a bit, because
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe in the first stage when I grow, the follower growth was super important and the engagement. Then maybe when I was consulting, because now I kind of stopped, the inbound leads were more important. And then now I'm at a phase where the follower growth is kind of irrelevant. I think that, to be honest, if I would have like 50K, 70K, it would be the same for me. It would be a bit more visibility,
Right.
but I think, or honestly, I always said, over 20K or 10K, the growth is secondary because you already have an engaged community. And also LinkedIn pushes, I think, more a bit like smaller accounts if you do the ratio, of the impressions that I get, or so, and it's a lot more important to keep the audience engaged and the quality of followers. So for
Hmm.
me now, I'm really focusing on building more of a local network. So for example, for me, it's very important that people from Switzerland follow me and whatever. So I'm not
Hmm.
interested in people from the US or from India or for whatever. I mean, of course you can follow me, but that's not the point. I would rather have, 10 followers from Switzerland than 500 from other countries. So,
Right. Right. Right.
so yeah. And now currently I'm more like, for me, like inbound brand collaborations, invites to podcasts, other type of opportunities are more important.
Hmm.
So I'm looking more at that, and it's happening quite regularly. So I'm happy, despite, as I told you, the reach is going out massive, is going down massively. So doesn't really matter.
Hmm. Okay. So, and if you were to advise someone who is trying to build an audience on LinkedIn, right, for themselves, for more job opportunities, for whatever, right, whatever they're trying to achieve, would you say number of followers or anything like that should not be a goal that they're going after? Um, or is there a separate metric that you would say, hey, pay attention to this. This is important.
I mean, at the beginning, I would say up to 10K, yes, followers are super important. I would rather, but followers that you, you shouldn't do all this growth hacking, random post stuff just to gain followers.
Hmm.
The right followers are important, but let's say maybe at the beginning a bit more top of the funnel content is important, to attract the people, to say, hey, I'm here, to comment, to just get the word out there. Also because then you refine the strategy. Later on, I think the quality becomes more and more important, and so the volume takes a bit of a back burner.
Got it. Got it. Right. 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 That makes sense. So you start broad, you build that audience, you attach people with you, but you build that connection, and then you start to go narrow with what you talk about, which can revolve around whatever you want to optimize your LinkedIn presence for. So it can be for more job opportunities or your field or whatever you service that you're offering, those kind of things.
Yeah, obviously, if you I didn't start with something to sell, okay?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I didn't write about something to sell. If you already have something to sell, then obviously you will talk more about what you sell, and you will already be very focused on a specific niche. So I think it's a different scenario, but still, if you start by promoting what you have, you cannot sell with every post. And to be honest, I don't think that on social media you should sell. I
Hmm.
think on social media you should really educate by showing what you do, how you do it, and then eventually say, hey, by the way, but not these things. By the way, I have 5 slots, call me, these kind of things. Or, hey, we are the best agency in the world. This is why. Nobody cares, like, so,
Yeah.
like, it's just random. Some people understood that listicles work, and so they start, hey, we are 5 reasons why we're the best company on earth. Nobody cares because not people don't care about this sort of listicles. So
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're always gonna put yourself at the top, and then I guess even reach-wise, like um, anyone who sees something like that, they're just gonna scroll up, right? They're not paying
Yeah,
attention to that salesy thing. People are not on
totally,
LinkedIn with an intent to buy something, right? That they want to connect, they want to consume.
totally. Yeah.
Hmm. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sara, for this opportunity to talk to you. It's been amazing. And yeah, I would love for you to tell people how they can connect with you, how they can reach out. Um, what's the best platform to see what you're doing?
Guess where? On LinkedIn.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'll link your LinkedIn profile in the description. And thank you for sparing the time. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. It was awesome. See you.